Have you ever felt like your mind is racing, trapped in a spiral of thoughts that just won't let you be? It's as if every worry, every little doubt, turns into a snowball that keeps growing out of control. And even when you try to distract yourself, these thoughts persist, slowly wearing you down. Today, I want to offer you something different. Let's break free from that mental trap. Because believe it or not, it's possible to have a lighter, calmer mind, more focused on what truly matters. In this video, I'll share 7 strategies inspired by Stoic wisdom and modern practices to detox your mind and stop overthinking. From learning to rebel against obsessive thoughts to creating your own mental fast and closing the door on past worries, this goes beyond a simple control your thoughts approach. These are tools that can give you back the freedom and peace your mind needs. I'm Gabriel, and if it's your first time here, I invite you to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more content like this. Stay until the end, because today we're going to learn how to live with less mental clutter and more room to enjoy life. Let's get started. Number 1. Rebel against your own thoughts. Imagine for a moment that you're sitting in your favorite chair, watching the day go by. But your mind isn't in the here and now. Instead, it's caught in a whirlwind of thoughts. Perhaps you're worried about health, the well-being of your children, or the weight of loneliness that sometimes feels heavier at this stage of life. These thoughts repeat, forming a loop that's hard to escape, with the weight growing each time they circle back. The key to breaking free is simple, though not always easy: rebel. Because although many don't realize it, obsessive thoughts can be challenged. Epictetus said, "We are disturbed not by things, but by the view we take of them." This means that many of the thoughts that weigh us down aren't truths, they're interpretations. Interpretations that you can learn to question and let go. How? The first step is to view these thoughts as visitors. Imagine you're at your front door and someone arrives who wants to come in, someone you haven't invited. That visitor is your thought. You can let it in and let it take over your whole space, or you can simply watch it pass by and choose not to let it in. Often, we think that every thought that appears needs to be entertained, but as Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust, taught, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our freedom and power to choose our response. It's in that space, that pause between the thought and our reaction, that the true rebellion begins. The next time a negative or troubling thought visits you, pause for a moment and ask yourself, is this true? Does thinking this way help me in any way? If it's a repetitive thought about the past, maybe you're carrying an unnecessary weight. If it's a worry about the future, ask yourself if it makes sense to keep living it over and over before it's even happened. What's the worst that could happen? And how much of it is really within your control? Sometimes negative thoughts come back because we're not used to setting limits on them. But remember, you are the one who controls your mind, not the other way around. It's a daily practice, an act of patience and strength. By choosing not to accept every thought as a truth, you're protecting your peace, the peace you've worked so hard for over the years. Rebelling against your thoughts doesn't mean ignoring them or pretending they don't exist. It means deciding which ideas deserve your time and energy. Because in the end, as Buddha said, what you think, you become. What you feel, you attract. What you imagine, you create. Start today, because this act of rebellion, this choice to master your mind, is the first step toward detoxing from thoughts that won't let you be. Number 3, stop replaying the past with a closure ritual. We all have memories or moments that resurface unexpectedly, taking up mental space. Perhaps it's a decision you wish you'd made differently, words you didn't say, or a loss that still stings. This replaying of the past can become a silent poison that drains your energy and, without you realizing it, keeps you from fully enjoying the present. The good news is, there's a way to close these chapters without forgetting or ignoring them, by creating a ritual of closure. In Stoicism, closure rituals help us release what no longer serves us. Marcus Aurelius said, "When faced with a difficulty, consider what you are capable of doing and choose to stop being troubled by what you cannot change." This is the essence of a closure ritual. A symbolic farewell, a permission you give yourself to let go, not out of forgetting, but out of respect for your own well-being. How to do it? Start by identifying the memory or situation that keeps returning. It could be recent or from many years ago. Take some time, in a quiet place, and write about it. Describe what happened, how it made you feel, and what you learned from the experience. In writing, you acknowledge the past without judgment, without idealizing it, just accepting it for what it was. Then, choose a symbol to signify closure. It could be a letter that you later burn, or a small stone that you bury in a special place. This symbolic act helps release that emotional weight. As you burn the letter or bury the stone, visualize yourself leaving that moment behind, not as a denial, but as a mature acceptance that its cycle in your life is complete. With this simple act, you're telling your mind, "I'm grateful for what I lived, and now I choose to move forward." Carl Jung, the renowned psychologist, believed that rituals help us integrate experiences so they don't stay lodged in the mind. He said, "What you resist persists. What you accept transforms." Closing these chapters doesn't mean ignoring them. It means freeing yourself from the weight of living in the past. Practicing this ritual is like leaving luggage at the train station. You continue the journey lighter with space for new experiences. Use this ritual whenever you feel something from the past is holding you back. Free yourself from replaying and create space for a calmer mind, ready to embrace the present. Number 4, practice active non-reaction. As time goes by, we learn that while we can't control what happens around us, we can control how we respond. Yet there are situations and people who seem to have a way of sparking worry, anger, or sadness in us before we even realize it. Have you ever experienced this? Someone says something, or an unexpected event happens, and immediately your mind reacts, taking you down a road of distressing thoughts. This impulse is natural, but the truth is that we can learn to respond differently. Practicing active non-reaction means observing before letting ourselves be carried away by those thoughts. Epictetus put it clearly, "Remember, it's not events that disturb us, but our interpretations of them." When we practice non-reaction, we're not ignoring or repressing emotions, but choosing to pause consciously before letting a thought take over. This pause gives us control over the situation and, above all, over our peace of mind. It's a way to act from calmness rather than reacting from impulse. Imagine that a family member, with the best of intentions, gives you unsolicited advice about your health or how you should live at this stage. Maybe the first thing you feel is a mix of frustration or anger, and your mind starts generating thoughts like, "Why do they think I can't handle my life?" Or, "It seems they don't trust me anymore." These thoughts are natural, but instead of following them, this is where active non-reaction comes into play. The next time you find yourself in such a situation, take a few seconds before responding, even if that response is only in your mind. Breathe and observe the thought that arises without getting involved, as if you were a spectator. Ask yourself if that automatic response really reflects your true intention or if it's just a mental habit. This small moment of pause gives you the space to decide if you really want to react or if you can allow that thought to dissolve without leaving a trace. By observing instead of reacting, you regain the power over what you allow to affect you. Practicing non-reaction also frees you from the constant need to find answers or solutions for every situation. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who knew suffering in its rawest forms, taught that in the pause before we react lies the freedom to choose how we respond, even in the most challenging circumstances. He said that this pause is the last of human freedoms, the ability to choose our attitude. In that pause is true freedom, authentic self-control. Remember, this isn't about suppressing what we feel or ignoring problems. It's about adopting a calm stance, an active non-reaction. Over time, this practice becomes a powerful tool that helps you live without letting every little stimulus disrupt your peace. It's like learning to watch a storm pass without getting drenched, choosing when and how to engage with what truly matters. Use this practice whenever you need to, and you'll see that your thoughts lose their urgency, your mind feels lighter, and your capacity to live in peace strengthens. Practicing active non-reaction is more than just a strategy. It's an act of self-love, a declaration that your peace is in your hands alone. Number 5, change your mental scenery to gain perspective. Let me share the story of Martha, a 72-year-old woman who lost her husband just over a year ago. Martha was very active. She loved tending to her garden, took daily walks, and enjoyed afternoons of reading. But after her husband's passing, something changed. She began feeling trapped in a sadness she couldn't shake, with constant thoughts of shared moments, losses, and what might have been. Martha began to isolate herself, and her days felt like a loop of repetitive memories and thoughts. She had become trapped in her own mental space. The things that used to bring her peace and joy, her garden, her books, lost their color. She felt as though she were locked in a single room of her mind, reliving the same thoughts over and over. One day, her granddaughter convinced her to join her on a painting retreat at a nearby beach. Martha was hesitant. The thought of leaving her house made her anxious, but she eventually agreed. When she arrived, something unexpected happened. The simple change of scenery, the fresh air, the smell of the sea, the sound of the waves, and the view of this place so different from her routine made her feel as if, little by little, another door in her mind was opening. Somehow, this physical shift began to change her mental state as well. Over that weekend, Martha spent time drawing and painting, something she hadn't done since her youth. She realized that her thoughts, which had always returned to the same place, began to scatter, to renew with lighter ideas. This change of scenery, both physical and mental, allowed her to see her own life from a different perspective. The sadness didn't vanish, but the shift helped her see that she could carry her grief without being trapped in it, that she could find new ways to process her experiences and gradually make room for something new. Marcus Aurelius taught something similar. Despite the difficulties he faced as an emperor, he found clarity in the simplicity of changing locations and observing himself from the outside. He said, "The mind adapts and converts to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting." He reminds us that it doesn't require a long journey to find change. Sometimes, a simple shift in location is enough to see things differently. When Martha returned home, she made a decision. She would keep changing her scenery whenever she felt her thoughts falling into that repetitive loop. She started spending more time at the local park, exploring nearby places she hadn't visited before, and found that each time she did, her mind also transformed. Sometimes, the simple act of changing our physical surroundings allows our minds to breathe, to escape that feeling of confinement. If you ever feel trapped in your thoughts, try changing your scenery. Go for a walk, visit a new place, open the windows and let in the light. And if you can't go out, rearrange your surroundings, move the furniture, create a different space. This simple practice can open a new door in your mind, one that lets you see things clearly and move forward, leaving space for the present and for what is still to come. As Socrates said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." By changing your mental scenery, you give yourself the chance to examine and appreciate each stage of your life from a new angle, with more peace and less weight on your heart. Number 6, the power of choosing your worry time. The mind has an incredible ability to jump from one thought to another, often leading us to worry endlessly. But what if you decided that only during a specific time of day or week would you allow yourself to worry? It may sound unusual, but this practice, known as worry time, has been used in both philosophy and psychology to reduce anxiety and help us gain real control over our worries. Imagine that each day, instead of letting worries come whenever they please, you set aside a specific moment for them. It could be half an hour a day, or if you prefer, once a week. This is the time when you allow yourself to reflect on your doubts, problems, and possible solutions. By designating a defined time for worrying, you send a clear signal to your mind. Outside of this time, it's not allowed to anticipate problems or dwell on anxieties. Seneca spoke of how man suffers more from what he imagines than from what actually happens. It's precisely this unchecked imagination that we want to manage here. By assigning a worry time, you're telling your mind that you can handle these thoughts, but on your own terms, not whenever they decide to intrude. The practice might seem simple, but it holds deep power. It's not about repressing worries, it's about containing them, keeping them in a controlled space so they don't take over your entire day. Let's consider Rosa, a 68-year-old woman who had spent years carrying around fears about her health. If she felt any pain, she immediately imagined the worst-case scenario, and that worry could last hours, even days. One day, she decided to try this technique. She set aside 15 minutes each night to go over what was on her mind. When the time was up, she would jot down any lingering thoughts or concerns and leave them for her next worry time. Over time, Rosa realized that by setting aside a specific space for her worries, they stopped interrupting her day, and she could focus on the things she genuinely enjoyed. At first, it might be challenging to set aside a worry outside of this designated time, but with practice and patience, the impact becomes noticeable. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and philosopher who taught us so much about inner strength, said, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." This worry time is exactly that, a way to change how we process our fears by giving them a specific time and place, but without letting them rule every moment. When setting your worry time, remember that outside of it, you have the right to live in peace. When a worrisome thought arises, tell your mind, "We'll handle this later." In doing so, you achieve a balance between responsibility and serenity, creating a space where you can live more calmly, less weighed down by what could happen, and more present in what is actually happening right now. Number 7, eliminate the noise that fills your mind. We live surrounded by noise, and I don't just mean traffic or the news. I'm talking about mental noise that comes from overexposure to information, from constantly taking on worries that aren't ours, and from filling our minds with things that have little to do with our real priorities. This noise sneaks into our minds, filling it with uninvited thoughts that drain our energy and mental space. Epictetus taught that inner peace is something we must protect. He said, "If you wish to improve, be content to appear clueless or stupid in extraneous matters." In other words, if we don't set boundaries on the information and stimuli we consume, our minds can be filled with noise that affects us in ways we don't even realize. This is especially important at this stage of life, where time and mental energy are precious resources to be safeguarded. To clean out this noise, start by identifying the sources feeding those unnecessary thoughts. Perhaps it's social media, news outlets that repeat the same problems every day, or certain conversations that load you with worry. It doesn't mean isolating yourself, it means learning to filter carefully. Decide how much time you'll devote to each activity, set a limit, and you'll start to notice how your mind begins to clear. I want to share the story of Miguel, a 75-year-old man who used to start every morning by checking the news and spending long stretches on social media. Without realizing it, he began feeling anxious, irritable, and increasingly worried about issues he couldn't solve, and that didn't even directly affect him. His daughter suggested he try an information diet, something as simple as reducing his exposure to content that disrupted his peace. At first, it was difficult, but gradually he reduced the time he spent on these activities, focusing instead on reading about topics that truly inspired him or enjoying time outdoors. What Miguel experienced was the incredible calm that comes when you choose to eliminate unnecessary noise. Because ultimately, it's not about escaping the world or ignoring what's happening. It's about protecting what you truly want to keep in your mind. It's a conscious choice to live in peace, guarding the mental and emotional space where your thoughts reside. Try this experiment. Choose a day, maybe weekends, to step away from the news, limit social media time, or spend more time on your favorite hobbies. As Henry David Thoreau said, "Our life is frittered away by detail. Simplify, simplify." By cutting out the noise that doesn't add value, you create a simpler life with more space for reflection, calm, and truly meaningful moments. Remember, your mind is a valuable place. By protecting it from external noise, you're making space for what truly matters: your own thoughts, your passions, your relationships, and the time you can spend with yourself in peace. The mind is undoubtedly a vast and complex terrain. Sometimes it feels like a calm ocean, other times like a raging sea of thoughts that pulls us along without pause. But by exploring these strategies together, you've learned something essential today. You are the navigator. Though thoughts come and go, and some seem stronger than others, you have the power to decide which ones take root and which ones you let drift away. Each strategy, from rebelling against useless thoughts to changing your mental scenery, is a tool to free up space, to let silence and serenity settle within. As we've seen, detoxing the mind is not just about clearing it, but learning to live with clarity, with less noise and more purpose. Stopping the endless stream of thoughts doesn't mean ignoring reality. It means seeing that reality with fresh, lighter eyes, without the weight of unnecessary worries. Remember, you're not alone on this journey. This search for a calmer mind and a fuller life is something we all share, and it's something you can also share with those around you. My name is Gabriel, and if this is your first time on the channel, I invite you to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of the upcoming topics we'll be covering. If you've made it this far, it means you're committed to your personal growth, and that deserves recognition. To see who's truly seeking this change, comment with the phrase, "I am Stoic," and let me know which country you're listening from. I'd love to hear from you and know who's on this journey of self-discovery. And don't leave without sharing this video with your loved ones. There may be someone in your life who needs to hear these words today and find a new perspective. Sometimes a small piece of advice can make a big difference. See you in the next video.